diving deeper into the philosophy of tech is a stream of words that is hard to take, but I'm sure that we can break it down so that we understand how this is actually working day to day on us. So could you tell me more of this?
Right, and I apologize for the complicated train of thoughts, but it's just, indeed, it's a very complex subject, and yet I think it's so important because, like you mentioned, it's an everyday thing. It's not something theoretical, esoterical that happens somewhere out there. It actually happens to you, me, to all of us every day, and that's why I think it's so important to talk about it. So I think if I distill it to just the bottom line is that technologies are not neutral. Period. Just that fact alone in itself is already very surprising to a lot of people because the response is, how do you mean? I mean, we build technologies do what we want them to do, and that's it, right? And so I'm trying to show also through the frameworks in the field of philosophy and ethics of technology, how we first design technologies and then actually they design us back, kind of. So there's a feedback loop between what we build and then how that changes our society. I think that would be the basic message of the ethics and philosophy of technology.
So we expect the things that we build to do something to us, but then in the first place we're the one deciding exactly how those technologies and products and so on are working actually. Yeah. So what are the things that one needs to watch out when they're involved in this process? So, you know, like some rules or norms that should be so clearly defined that helps you go through a process of actually building products that are, you know, respect some of the ethical norms and actually do good and do the change that we want and not something else.
I follow your train of thoughts, but I'd hate to, I'd have to disappoint you right here and now because I don't think, at least to my best knowledge, there are no clear norms or rules how to do it. I mean, that would be so grand.
Could we write some now?
Right, should we do it? But it's actually, I think, at least in my work, I try to draw away attention from rules or norms or I don't know, some kind of guidelines how to do it, back to experiences. To the people, indeed. So like, so how do we experience this? How are the relations that we have with other people, with even ourselves and with the environment, for instance? What is changing? And that's the tricky part because while you're in this experience, how do you step out of it and reflect on how to change? And yet I think it is possible because, you know, after you binge watch like 8 episodes in a row on Netflix, you kind of start realizing that your eyes are tired and maybe you can spend the time in a slightly different way. But because by default Netflix introduces the next episode automatically, you already don't have that much choice. I mean, you actually actively have to switch off the button to stop it from immediately introducing the next episode. So that was like one of those things. YouTube does the same thing, right? And so this attention grabbing feature that is a default part of the design to make it sticky, to make the users keep coming back, to keep them engaged for as long as possible with the same technological interaction. I think that's a good way to, you know, at least start thinking about it, to look at this, about how it shapes our experiences and our interactions. And of course, maybe also looking at what I tried to show in the talk, how it shapes our interaction with other people, because it definitely does. And it usually is very subtle, unless there's some problem or certain, I don't know, maybe problematic situation or an issue arises, then we can reflect, okay, why is it problematic? Why am I bothered by this? I'm bothered, what has actually happened? That would be a very direct cue to reflect on what's happening. But that's not always the case, because we usually enjoy to be sucked in this comfortable technological bubble, because it makes everything ready, available immediately, you know, and there's no disruption.
It seems that it gives you exactly the options to follow, and
right. It already suggests, hence the morality of technology. I mean, of course, we do have the choices, and we have the choice not to use this technology anymore. But when do we become aware of this, and how do we reach the choice? And are there any alternative choices? Because, for instance, I'm not a fan of the either or, yes or no solutions. I think the devil lies in the details, and it's important to understand. For instance, what is important? What is using this technology? What does it provoke you about? Like, what does it show you? What is meaningful to you? And how can we still maintain this while using the technology? I mean, granted, of course, sometimes it's not smart to use this technology anymore, right? I mean, there's a reason. Actually, I think historically the field of, well, we may say, if I stretch a little bit, ethics of technology we can say, or technology assessment, started after the introduction of the atomic bomb, right? Before that, people thought technology just fosters human good and is here to give progress and innovation. And then atomic bomb happened, nuclear bomb. And we saw the devastating consequences of how this could be not a peaceful atom, but it can be used as a weapon of massive destruction. And then actually, so from the 1950s, we started thinking of how can we make sure that the technologies that we bring are actually used for the good. And then you have all the other questions. Which good? For who is this good? Maybe it's good for you, but not for me. Those kind of questions. So it's this subtlety of experience and a context that I think is very easy to miss out when you focus only on the rules and only on the guidelines, because they tend to generalize. Don't get me wrong, I think it's very important to have the rules and guidelines, and I think it's very, very smart people who bring them about through a lot of experience. But I like to focus more on individual practices, on experiences of people in everyday life, because I think it's equally important.
The perspective that you put on things, it's even better. So coming to this answer and coming to this conclusion, more or less, it definitely gives us all another perspective to look at. So this is some of the best parts in, you know, like diving deeper into a subject. But then speaking about this, and only for a couple of minutes with you, I see that this is a mind-blowing process and a mind-blowing, you know, like field. How did you ended up now or throughout your life to be interested in actually researching and working in this field? What was your moment of, you know, like change or metamorphosis, as we speak about the theme, that made you to follow this path?
Before I answer that question, I quickly update to what you said, because I don't think there's a better or worse perspective, but I think it's important to complement them, right? So rules and practices. And coming back to your question, I don't know if there was a single aha moment, you know. Definitely what I talked about on stage, about this working in the area of data protection and privacy, it just really in black and white confronted me with, like, how come we haven't had this before? I mean, didn't we always value privacy? And not just privacy as control of information, it's a very narrow meaning of that, but in many other social meanings, like also private and public space. So that really made me thinking about technologies very consciously, to reflect on them for the first time. And I have been working in the field of data protection for a while, and then I came back to academia to have another master program in the area of science and technology studies. And that was mind-blowing for me. Okay, so maybe doing that master's program, that's when I went to the Netherlands in 2013. And I was like, people really pay attention to how society is being shaped by technologies that we create. I mean, like, people invest money into it, they do research, they actually hire these people, they have these institutions on formal level that assess this technological impact. Coming from Ukraine, okay, that was something unrealistic to me. And yet I think so relevant, especially for, I don't know, countries like Ukraine, for instance, when we're very known for booming IT industry and a lot of people, well, notorious also for hacking and stuff. So we are very prone to technological innovation. We're generally, I would say, are early adopters. And I think that's why it's so important to understand the ethical impact of technology. Because coming back to metamorphosis and, you know, connecting it with my theme, value change can be seen as such a big thing. Like, okay, when does it change from A to B? You know, what's the process? And I think for me it's very important to show how change is happening already now. We focus so much on the future, we forget that we make it right now with the decisions and little choices that we designed with, or how we use this technology. And I think it's so important to, you know, scale it down a little bit to show that, sure, future is very important, but it's the decisions that we make today that actually shape it. So.
Okay, so then that puts things under another different spotlight, which is also a mind-opening perspective of change happening at the moment. Is there at the moment a gut feeling and an overall impression that you want to share with us about what happened here and how this, you know, like gave you probably a bit of time to reflect on the moment at TEDx, the team, the people, all the energy around what's happening here these days that you'd want to share with us?
Definitely. I mean, it's such a humbling experience because I was talking to people earlier today and saying like, oh my God, I'm so afraid to screw up because I've been such a faithful fan of TEDx for so many years. Because I'm the one to watch the shows and to listen to the TEDx podcast, you know, and I'm like, this is so important what they're doing, because I do think TEDx as a platform and TED, they are these agents of change themselves. By bringing the knowledge in a way that people can relate to, by distilling these super complex subjects to something that everyday people in their everyday lives can actually understand. I get that. Like, I have something like that. And I think that's extremely important. So actually, you are also changing a lot of the ways in which people even approach certain topics and how they position themselves in relation to that, and they start thinking about it. And that's the power, I think. When you make people start thinking about things they haven't considered before, you've done it. I mean, that's already such a huge success. So that's my aha moment.
Yet again, another layer that you experience within what happens into TEDx. And as we do in TEDx, and we put some themes from year to year, and we have this year Metamorphosis. Do you have a theme that best describes you or your stage in life right now?
I think value change is a beautiful topic to describe my professional and my personal state of mind at the moment.
Would you go for that?
Yeah, we'll just keep it at value change.
Okay, okay. Thanks for sharing all of these things with us, your talk and the time spent here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,